Hey students, it's Miss Wiley here, and I'm going to show you some videos here, or one video here, on multiplying binomials again, except this time we're going to talk about special products. So there are certain binomials that you will multiply together that will give you a specific type of result, which will become important whenever we get to the factoring part of the chapter. So let's take a moment and go over those. There's two types. Let's go over those two types of what we like to call special products. Okay, so the first special product here is what we call, let me get myself organized a little bit more here, is what we call a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so a perfect square trinomial, we've seen this before, like we've actually done this before. And it's whenever you have a binomial. So let's take something like a plus b and raise it to the second power. Okay, this is what we call a perfect square. Now, a perfect square, remember, is whenever you have something to the second power. So something multiplied to itself. Like 2 squared gives me 4. 4 is a perfect square, right? So that's what this is, except instead of it just being a number squared, we have a binomial inside of a parenthesis that is being squared, okay? So when we do this here, I'm going to go, whoopsies, we would have to make sure that we don't distribute. So on a problem like this, okay, you cannot distribute the exponent. So that's something that's really important to remember. You can only distribute if it's a monomial. This is a binomial. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure to write it out. My algebra teacher once told me, when in doubt, write it out. So if you aren't sure if you can distribute the exponent or not, just write it out and multiply. So it's going to look something like this, okay? So then from here, we can go ahead and we can just FOIL, right? So I don't know what happened to my screen here. So foiling, remember, if you want to draw the arrows, you can. If you don't want to, that's fine as well. So we're going to go ahead and multiply the first terms together. That's going to give me a squared. We're going to multiply the outside terms together. That would be positive AB. Going to the other part of the distribution, we're going to multiply the insides. B times A, also AB. Make sure you write it as AB and not BA. I know they mean the same thing, but we want to make sure to write things in alphabetical order so that you can easily identify like terms. And then finally, we have the last. So we have plus B squared, because that's B times B. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and combine our like terms. And we end up with A squared plus 2AB plus B squared. And that is your final answer. Okay, so from there, you're done with the problem. Now, something to pay attention to this is some patterns that we see. Okay, so a couple patterns that we see here in this problem come from this first term and this last term. So the first and last terms, when multiplying multiplying a binomial to the second power, the first and last terms will be perfect squares. So if you get a binomial to the second power and your first or last term is not a perfect square, assuming that you've put it in standard form like you're supposed to, then, well, you know you've done something wrong, right? So there's that as well. The other pattern that you're going to see is, and this one's kind of hard to write out, so I'll just explain it, is that this product that you get from the last, it will be the same product that you get from the product that you get from multiplying the first, or I can't talk. the product that you get from multiplying the outside terms will be the same as what you get with the inside terms. You see how you get the same exact term twice, right? So that means that this term, the outside and the inside products, will be exactly the same. Woo! Right? So we can try an example of this using numbers, right? So let's do an example. Let's do 2x plus 1 to the second power. So 2x plus 1 to the second power, going ahead and multiplying that out, this is what this would look like. Now, you cannot just distribute it, because if you distribute it, okay, you would just get 4x to the second plus 1 if you just square the 2x and square the 1. And that is not going to be correct, because remember, this is technically a binomial to the second power. So it's a binomial times a binomial. And a binomial times a binomial should always initially, before simplifying, should give you 4 terms. And if all you do is distribute that 2 to the first term and the second term of the binomial, you're only getting 2 terms. You've completely missed 2 terms of this product. So it's really important that you take time to think about that. So I want you to take a second, press pause, and I want you to multiply this using multiple distribution, aka FOIL method, and see what you get. All right, you should have tried that one out. And in doing that, you should have gotten 4x squared. That's here. And you should have gotten 2x. Now remember, this outside product should be the same as the inside product whenever you have a binomial to the second power in order to create what we call a perfect square trinomial. And then you're going to do 1 times 1. That gives you the 1. Combining your like terms, hopefully you did that, you would get 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. And this is what we call a perfect square trinomial. I'm going to simplify that a little bit. So there's that. Okay. The next special product is going to be what we call